Okay, it should be good now.
Thank you. Good evening. This is the Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee Engineering Subcommittee meeting, March 8th, 2022. And I'm going to read a notice here. This meeting may involve the remote participation by members either by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency, novel coronavirus pandemic, pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota statutes, section 113D.021. So there we go there. Welcome everybody. We've got an agenda and we've got one item on it, which is the Metro B-Line, BRT, and Lake Street improvements. This is on your in your agenda on your in LIMS in case you want to take a look at it. And we have Jasna Hadzik-Stanek from Minneapolis Public Works, Adam Smith and Cody Olsen from Metro Transit, and Chad Ellis from Hennepin County. And with that, I'll let you folks take it over.
Thanks, Dan. And okay, so maybe we can do a quick introductions. There's 3 agencies here to present on this project. I'll start. Jasna Hadzik-Stanek, Transportation Planner with City of Minneapolis Public Works. I'll hand it over to Hennepin County.
Thank you. Chad Ellis. I manage transportation planning at Hennepin County Public Works. And I'll send it to Cody.
Thanks, Chad. Hi, everyone. My name is Cody Olsen. I'm a community outreach coordinator for Metro Transit, specifically working on the Metro B-Line project.
Great. So thank you, everyone, for allowing us to present at your meeting. I've shared my screen. Can you see my screen? We're good to go. All right. We'll be walking through the presentation here for the Metro B-Line and Lake Street improvements. So Cody will start us off, and then Jasna, and then myself. Go ahead, Cody.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, I wanted to kick this off, really quick with just talking a little bit more about the Metro B-Line project. As Metro Transit is planning improvements to Lake Street with the Metro B-Line Bus Rapid Transit project, Hennepin County and the City of Minneapolis staff have partnered to take a deeper look at Lake Street and how to improve the corridor alongside the B-Line improvements. If we move on to the next slide, we'll have a kind of a brief overview of the Metro B-Line. So this is a map of the Metro B-Line from Bide-Makaska all the way to downtown St. Paul. It's a 12.6 mile long BRT route that will substantially replace the Route 21, which is our region's second highest ridership route, but our slowest in-service speed route, which means it carries the second most people, but moves the slowest while doing so. The plan for the B-Line will be service every 10 minutes and a projected 20% faster overall trip end-to-end than the existing Route 21. There is a plan for local service and stops to remain between Hennepin Avenue and Minnehaha Avenue in Minneapolis. And then the project itself is a $65 million project, fully funded through federal, state, and metropolitan council funds, with a targeted opening in 2024. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so on this slide, we have a number of different ways that Metro Transit and our BRT project provides a faster trip. The B-Line is planned to stop at 33 locations along the route, 16 of which will be in Minneapolis along Lake Street. The stops are going to be about 0.4 miles apart, or about 2 to 3 stops per mile, to help balance that speed and access. These stations were designed with the kind of things you see on this slide, like limited stops, pay before you board, curb extensions, and then some transit advantages that we'll be talking about later in the presentation. And these are really designed to provide a faster and more efficient service, along with some amenities that really help improve the customer experience, things that we've heard from our riders and our customers that they really want to see. And so stations will include a number of different amenities, including heat, light, real-time information, some security features, and a higher priority of maintenance. Next slide, please. So in terms of schedule, we've been engaging around the Metro B-Line project since 2019. So it's been underway for several years now. We released a corridor plan in 2021 with a significant amount of public engagement throughout the entire year. We received hundreds of comments and incorporated them throughout the planning process. Throughout the year, we released a draft plan and then some new recommendations, and then finalized it in October of 2021. We're currently in the design and engineering phase, have been since fall of 2021, and are going to be doing that throughout the rest of the year. With construction set to start in 2023 and go through 2024. And I'll pass it off to Jasna.
Thanks, Cody. Just a heads up, I'm having some connection issues, so if I do cut out, Chad, you might have to pick up. So I'll start. So again, Jasna Hadjic-Stanek with City of Minneapolis. I'm going to now pivot from B-Line BRT project to talk about the Lake Street improvements, starting with a little bit of background on Lake Street. Lake Street, also known as County Road 3, is a major east-west thoroughfare connecting Minneapolis to St. Louis Park and chain of lakes to the west of our city, and St. Paul and the Mississippi River to the east. The corridor is owned and operated by Hennepin County, but City of Minneapolis does manage the traffic signals, making interagency coordination essential for this project. As we all know, Lake Street is one of our most vibrant, culturally diverse streets in the Twin Cities and has a unique cultural significance across the corridor with regional destinations throughout. Outside of downtown, it also has some of the heaviest pedestrian crossing counts observed within all of Hennepin County. Just an example, there's 300 daily pedestrian crossings at Lake at Hennepin. In addition to all the great things along Lake Street, we also know that there is many challenges. For example, Lake Street is one of the highest crash corridors in Minneapolis and one of the highest in all of Hennepin County. It's been identified as a high injury street in Minneapolis Vision Zero Action Plan, and we know that 8% of all crashes occur on Lake Street. It was last reconstructed in 2007 to 2008 timeframe from DuPont to the river. And typically with reconstruction projects, there's a 50+ year service life. So many assets are currently in good condition and do not need to be replaced, but there is a need for a pavement treatment likely in the next 5 years. In addition to this, the area between Hennepin and Hiawatha Avenue is identified as an area of concentrated poverty. And the area between 35W and Hiawatha is identified as a Minneapolis Southside Green Zone, meaning it's a high priority for greening, green infrastructure, trees, and so on. And then, as we all know, it was a site of much of civil unrest in 2020 and only mere blocks away from 38th and Chicago. Next slide, please. So for over a year now, staff from all 3 of our agencies have been working together in close partnership to address corridor-wide improvements through a shared vision and approach, which is first and foremost to increase transit speed and reliability through this regional project. Secondly, to improve safety for all modes, so reducing crashes and severe injuries as listed in our Vision Zero Action Plan. And last but not least, improving the conditions and comfort for people walking, using transit, and crossing Lake Street to access the many businesses. At the same time, it also made sense to combine all of our county and city investments of signal modifications, pavement needs, and ADA upgrades into one single project. It was also critical for us to limit impacts to the public and businesses along the corridors who have experienced so much over the last couple of years. And we also wanted to leverage other projects that were happening along the corridor, including the MnDOT 35W and High Lake project. So some of the stations are already being constructed as part of those projects, and at the same time, we're leveraging those improvements as well. So we collectively studied feasible roadway concepts that included various combinations of bus-only lanes with a 4-to-3 lane conversion and a dedicated center left turn lane. Next slide, please. So working together, we evaluated several concepts through traffic and transit operational modeling. So this means we looked at traffic volume to see how traffic and transit operates in the existing condition, how we can improve this. Our priorities were also driven by our current agency plans and policies, including the city's Transportation Action Plan, Hennepin County's Climate Action Plan, our Minneapolis 2040 plan, as well as both of our agency's Complete Streets policies. We also looked at extensive stakeholder feedback from the BRT outreach, as well as the city's TAP efforts. And as I mentioned, Minneapolis 2040. So collectively, we had a number of thousands of comments to help support these changes. And last but not least, we had to rely on staff expertise to balance out the various priorities and constraints along the corridor. So recognizing that this is not a reconstruction project, our recommended improvements are mainly limited to what we call between the curbs. So we're not touching the other side of the curb, and in order to support these broader goals of reducing crash and severe injuries along the corridor, improving transit speed and reliability, and bringing existing ADA infrastructure up to compliance and upgrading some of our signals. And from here, I'm going to hand it over to Chad, who's going to talk about what this all means and what Lake Street will look like.
Thank you. So this figure shows a conceptual cross-section being considered. On the top is a 4-lane divided roadway with parking on both sides. This is typical between DuPont and Blaisdell, a few other locations on the corridor, such as Minnehaha to the river. So our recommended concept or proposed concept here is to replace the existing 4-lane undivided roadway with a single general purpose lane each direction with the center turn lane. At signalized intersections, that would be dedicated left turn lanes. Also known as a 4-to-3 lane conversion. Hennepin County has performed a number of these in recent years, and they're proven to significantly reduce several types of crashes, including vehicle and pedestrian crashes. This 3-lane design would be accompanied by a single bus lane for the majority of the corridor. After careful consideration and looking at data for ridership trends, traffic volumes, and directionality, amongst other things, we envision that this bus lane would predominantly be best served in the westbound direction. But there are some locations where the geometry is able to fit bus lanes in both directions, as you'll see in the next graphic. Just want to point out that the intent of this bus lane is to be a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week bus lane. It'll prohibit through traffic from using it, but it will be shared with vehicles making right turns and those assessing business accesses and on-street parking. Outside of the station platform locations, we plan for minimal impacts to parking, sidewalks, and the existing curb bump outs. So as previously mentioned, mainly just new pavement and new striping between the curbs. So this graphic is meant to show that we are proposing over 6 miles of bus lanes in this concept between Dean Parkway and the Mississippi River. The majority, over 5 miles in the westbound direction and a little over a mile in the eastbound direction. And those are represented by the red lines on this graphic. Bus-only lanes are shown in each direction between Dean Parkway on the left where the red lines start and through the one-way pairs of Lake and Lagoon. And then east of DuPont, mainly dominated by a westbound bus lane between DuPont and the Mississippi River. You'll also notice on here there are some short gaps, mainly highlighted in yellow, that require further evaluation. These are locations where the transit and traffic modeling suggested significant delays to overall intersections from the traffic analysis. So right now we are proposing, and you'll see this in a future figure as well that we'll show you today, retaining dual westbound lanes for general purpose that the buses would also be in. But with this, we recognize that we'll need to do additional traffic counts and further modeling and observation to consider future changes. This doesn't prohibit a future bus lane. It's just not where the modeling and the expertise from staff has led us with this project. So now I'd like to walk through, I think there's about 6 representative slides here of a proposed restriping concept, starting from the west and moving east. So this shows snapshots. This is representative of pretty much west Bedeh-McCoska Parkway to east Bedeh-McCoska Parkway, where we're planning on converting the outside lanes to dedicated bus lanes in both directions. We plan to limit impacts mainly to just between the curbs, as mentioned, outside of the bus rapid transit platform locations, so minimal curb work, but upgrading pedestrian ramps where necessary, and doing traffic signal modifications to support this restriping. So next is a representative look through the one-way pairs of Lake and Lagoon, where you'll once again see the outside lane designated as a bus-only lane in each direction. Given that the segment was not reconstructed in the 2007 through 2008 timeframe, we are also looking at the installation of curb bump outs to further enhance pedestrian crossing safety by minimizing that distance and exposure. There is a yellow box up here mentioned that it says further review needed for Lagoon Avenue lane configuration and parking. There are some parking, off-peak parking allowed on the south side of Lagoon that needs further evaluation to determine parking needs throughout the day. Next is the snapshot of what it might look like at the Lake and Lagoon intersection. This intersection presents significant challenges with some of the heaviest pedestrian transit and traffic volumes on the corridor. Our priorities here are to enhance safety for all modes through adding dedicated left turn lanes and signal phasing while maintaining the pedestrian crossing distances. The proposed concept includes left turn lanes and far side bus rapid transit platforms and a short pullout for the bus platform station in the southeast quadrant. Next is at Interstate 35W, where the project was recently completed by the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Stations were constructed already, and those include the Nicollet Avenue station, the Interstate 35W station, and the 4th and 5th Avenue station. So minimal revisions, mainly consisting of striping changes, are proposed through this reconstructed segment from Blaisdell to 5th Avenue. Again, as shown on the screen in the yellow, further agency coordination is necessary with the Minnesota Department of Transportation to determine the feasibility of restriping and having bus-only lanes through this area. Next is the Lake and Cedar intersection, which also presents unique challenges with the need to improve safety and address traffic and transit capacity. Similar to Lyndale Avenue, we envision far side platforms and a bus pull-out bay in the southeast quadrant. Again, due to the need to balance transit and traffic operations, a dedicated westbound bus lane is not currently envisioned in this concept, but we'll continue to study its potential through this intersection as well. And this is the last concept snapshot. East of Minnehaha Avenue to the Mississippi River, traffic volumes are slightly less than other locations along East Lake Street. So through this area, we are proposing a consistent 3-lane section with a westbound bus lane, and minimal impacts to parking on this segment are envisioned. So I'd like to transition now to upcoming engagement and communication efforts. So as mentioned previously, public feedback was received through recent past engagement efforts, and we also reviewed, monitored, and analyzed crash data and incorporated this into the planning process. More than 800 comments were received from the Beeline corridor planning, and thousands of people and residents were heard through Minneapolis's outreach for the Transportation Action Plan, Vision Zero Action Plan, and the Minneapolis 2040 plan. So the common themes from all that engagement that apply to this corridor is a desire for more, improved, and faster transit, a desire for quickly improving safety on high crash streets, and a desire for pedestrian improvements along and across busy corridors. We recently launched a Hennepin County webpage to communicate this information and share with our agency, share our shared agency vision for the Beeline bus rapid transit on Lake streets. So agency staff will also be following up with the impacted neighborhood organizations with a planned virtual open house currently set for next Wednesday, March 16th. So we are trying to get that information up on our website and get that out to our neighborhood groups. So on our website, and that is listed, the second link here, it's www.hennepin.us/lake-street-improvements. You can find a pre-recorded presentation very similar to what you're hearing today. And you can find other information, including the full concept layout and some other summary information of the efforts done to date that led to the development of that layout and us being in front of you today. So other happenings for communication engagement were council member and commissioner briefings. We've also met with the Minneapolis Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Hennepin County Active Transportation Committee, and other business and stakeholder groups. And the next committee meeting is the Public Works and Infrastructure meeting scheduled for March 31st, followed by the Minneapolis City Council in April. So next steps are to continue to communicate and hold that public virtual open house next week, and really get the word out there and point people towards the webpage for not only the Hennepin County webpage with these improvements, but also the Metro Beeline webpage. Really continue to work with our agency partners on agreements and really trying to align funding to deliver on a vision and the concept that was shared with you today. So based on the timeline, plans need to be finalized by the end of the year to bid and award and start construction in 2023 into 2024 to open for service in 2024. So thank you for listening to our presentation. We will stand for questions.
Elissa?
Hey everyone, this is Alyssa Shuffman, Ward 9 rep. Very excited about a lot of things that you have shared today. I am a regular user of the 21 bus and really excited for those all these improvements. and all the hard work that has gone into this plan thus far. I think a couple things stand out to me. I think when your team, I think it was Cody who came and presented about the B-line. Someone came and presented about the B-line a number of months ago, when the full-time bus lanes were still under consideration. I think I'm disappointed that we don't have full-time bus lanes. I know staff have been very clear as to their reasoning as to why we don't have full-time bus lanes. But I will note that part of that conversation really focused on the potential for bike improvements on the corridor in certain areas, and that was part of the reasoning that we couldn't have full-time bus lanes along the length of the corridor. And so that feels a little bit like some of that conversation got dropped because we're not seeing any of that in the presentation today. And then I think I'll just continue to highlight that, while this is a really, really, really big improvement to bus service on Lake Street that I'm very excited to use, we have goals as a city to double transit ridership in the next 8 years. And that to double transit ridership, we really need to be moving away from that level of service model of thinking and assuming that everybody who drives on Lake Street right now is going to continue to drive in the future. And so really want to continue to push our thinking around the amount of space we're dedicating to traffic and car travel and drivers, and encourage us to give as much space as we can to buses and to bikes. So those are my two sort of big picture observations, and not necessarily things that you all need to respond to as staff. Though if there's anything in there that you want to respond to, you're more than welcome. But thank you again for being here.
Aaron?
Hey, yeah, so thank you for the presentation, and thanks Alyssa too for those thoughts. I just wanted to say I'm excited to see the 4-to-3 conversion in stretches on Lake Street. One thing I just want to I don't know if I could call this truly a cautionary tale or what, but to use the example of bike lanes and the buffered bike lane on Portland and Park Avenue. Hennepin County kind of has a habit, at least historically, of accommodating the most, in your example, Chad, I saw this, trying to accommodate all the heavy traffic of cars, and Alyssa kind of hit this too in her comment, but a lot of times what's the greatest feature of something that Hennepin County does, like those buffered bike lanes on Park or Portland, end up disappearing at those key intersections where, say, the buffered bike lane would be most important because there's the most traffic there. And rather than having it removed, it should maybe be enhanced. And that's kind of where my thoughts go toward with this specific bus line too. If you look at in between Windale and some of those key areas near 35W, I just see, knowing from riding the bus and also biking around there and walking and driving in the past, that those are some of the areas where you'd most want that bus priority. And so if there's a way to get even just a couple more blocks in there, I really think that could make a huge difference in making that new bus line into a priority. So anyway, those are my thoughts, and I appreciate your presentation.
Matthew?
Hi, Matthew Hendricks, representative for Ward 6. I want to echo the thanks of the first two presenters, and my initial reaction to seeing the plan is that you've got the bus lane where you don't need it, and you don't have it where you really need it, or where it wouldn't, provide the most benefit. And so it does seem like for a transit project, this is really still putting traffic first and transit second. So I'd encourage you to, look at the places that are congested and make sure those places get the bus lane. And then I'd absolutely trade the bus lane on some of the less congested blocks away, in exchange for maybe getting shorter crossing distances or mid-block islands for pedestrians to cross half of Lake, the westbound traffic first and the eastbound traffic. Lake is a very hostile street right now to pedestrians. And with the way the bus lane is arranged on some of these blocks, where it's not necessarily as crucial to have, you're essentially you're going through the exercise of doing a 4-to-3 conversion, but not getting the benefit of it from the perspective of a pedestrian, because there's still 45-ish feet to cross to get across the street. So I'd encourage you to take a more transit prioritizing approach to the project. And yeah, I'll leave it at that with the general comment. Thank you again, though. I know it's a lot of work, and I really appreciate the work you're putting into it.
Adrian?
Yeah, thank you. This is Adrienne Bachheim. I'm the rep for City of Minneapolis CPED. I want to piggyback on the comments that are already made, and just also say that, you know, given what you've presented about how Lake Street is a area of concentrated poverty in places, that it's a high injury network, given that it has the second highest ridership route, I was surprised to see so many locations without dedicated bus lanes. And the idea of, you know, improving transit speed by 20% sounds good, but I wonder, I don't know where it puts that in comparison to other routes. And I don't know if that's enough for one of the major, or I would probably say the major east-west route in South Minneapolis. It just doesn't seem to be quite enough to get to the point where we're really encouraging people to take transit rather than driving. So thanks.
I can speak to the, the kind of question about, 20% improvement in transit. And Chad, I don't know afterwards if you want to talk a bit more about, kind of the bus lanes and why some places were, kind of omitted from bus lanes. But, the 20%, kind of time, the time increase also includes a significant on-time performance increase as well. And so in addition to the route being faster, really one of the biggest things we're able to get through this project is having the route be more reliable. So we won't be having buses bunching up in 3 or 4 sometimes, or having different, kind of buses be early and then late. So we get to have a little bit more reliability, which is good with it. And in addition to that, there is that 20% travel time improvement. It would be great if we could get that faster, but at the same time, with improved frequency and still cutting that time down and making it more reliable, it does really help to provide that better experience for our customers.
Yeah, and I've been kind of keeping track of things here, so maybe I'll run through a few things and just try to provide some answers. So it was mentioned a little bit about full-time bus lanes. These are full-time bus lanes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The ones shown, they're just in certain locations, it's not in both directions. So I think that was probably more what the comment was for, but just to clarify, they are well, I guess they're what I consider full-time bus lanes. We do share them with the right turn lanes and access to the curbs and to the driveways. Bike lanes were mentioned. So really, through working with our partners here, we really prioritize transit on this corridor. So in those locations where the 4-to-3 lane conversion is occurring, and pretty much anywhere we could still accommodate left turn lanes for safety of vehicles, for those for crossings. That extra space that was left over was prioritized for the bus, so that was put towards a bus lane. So if a lot of the corridor out there is 4 lanes right now, and they're narrower lanes, I think they're less than 11 feet. So we're repurposing those to a 3 lane with bus lane, or if there's 5 lanes, which is the case in Park, Portland, Chicago, that's where the bus lanes go in both directions, both outside lanes, and then you still have the 3 lane in the middle. So this is a essentially an overlay project between the stations and a restriping and signal modifications to go with it and pedestrian ramp upgrades and bump outs, but it's not a full reconstruction project where we would look at removing parking, removing curb bump outs there's a lot of curb bump outs in there between DuPont and the river right now. Almost every intersection has them. The locations they're missing are mainly at the transit stops, the local transit stops now. So really that space we have to work with is those 4 narrower lanes that are out there today. But good comments on that. Oh, the comment, accommodate heavy traffic of cars. So I just wanted to mention, so what we saw is we've through the transit and traffic operations analysis, we saw that just putting bus lanes in both directions really it just backed up the cars, and it eventually spills back into where the buses are, and we totally so it hurt the bus operations as well as it hurt the vehicle operations, and really we're trying to avoid people disobeying and use aggressive and poor behaviors while driving on Lake Street, because we do see some of that now. So really trying to have a consistent section here, what people can really expect. There's going to be turn lanes at intersections. They're going to be able to get out of the traffic queue. Cars behind them aren't going to have to swerve and weave and go around and create these poor behaviors leading to crashes and really an unsafe pedestrian crossing environment. So we're really trying to improve the experience for all users on Lake Street. But really, this is really rooted in the transit. So advantages going to transit. I wanted to mention that as well. There will be Metro Transit is looking at adding bus priority to, I believe, probably all the signal systems or where needed, so that the bus is communicating with the signal ahead of it in time to give them a priority to get through that signal, whether they're in a general purpose lane or in a bus only lane. That communication will be going on. So that will be a great upgrade, as well as I think mentioned by Cody. Mid-block crossing islands were mentioned. So yeah, this won't be in the same context of the question that was posed, but even with a 3-lane with a bus lane, we do go by a number of T intersections, one-way streets, so it creates there isn't always a need for a left turn lane in the opposing direction. So we are aware of those, and those are on our radar as we look to try to fund these improvements. Those would be great safety upgrades to put those in those locations. I know the comment was more addressed at in other locations as well, potentially drop the bus lane to create that space. Oh, and then so many locations without a bus lane. I think, over half, of the bus lanes being added to over half of this entire of projects. So I think that maybe that comment was more addressed towards bus lanes in both directions for the entire corridor. But again, without we looked into that, and it just didn't perform very well. So this doesn't preclude that. I mean, we're really just reassigning the space that's out there today with a restriping project. So this is a great step in the right, in a forward direction of putting the beeline on Lake Street, increasing safety for all modes, enhancing the pedestrian safety. So definitely we'll continue to monitor and work towards a better Lake Street and a vision that is obviously is changing. Thank you.
I see a couple of more hands, but maybe if I can just speak to the Alyssa's question on the bikeway. I know she had to hop off, but I was at the November, I think we came November a couple months ago to present to the BAC, and we did, as Alyssa said, talk about the bikeway east of Minnehaha, which is identified in our city's transportation action plan. as a near-term connector or and a long-term low stress bikeway AAA facility. So as Chad showed in the plans, we are proposing a 4 to 3 lane conversion with a westbound bus only lane in that segment. And I did want to touch on that because in that conversation when we were here previously, the reason why we couldn't fit in both, it is the question one or the other. Our plans do show bus only lanes and bike lanes, which is where we had to make the staff recommendation. And as Chad talked about the bump outs, we would really have to remove all those bump outs in order to fit in a bikeway and a bus only lane. So as staff, we did look at several trade-offs. We look at safety data. We looked at transit advantages, how many seconds and minutes transit would gain. We did consider many aspects, and we just found that a 4 to 3 lane conversion provided the most benefit with a westbound bus only lane in this segment versus a connector bikeway without any protection, physical protection. So it's important to note, as Chad did say, this is a striping, and it wouldn't preclude a future long-term low-stress bikeway along the stretch of Lake Street as a potential project in the future. So just wanted to address the bikeway question.
Adrian.
Yeah, thanks. This is Adrian from CPED again. I just wanted to follow up with a question for Chad's explanation about how full, and let me know if I'm not saying this correctly, but so you're saying the full transit routes would, or sorry, if the entire corridor had transit only lanes, that would back up the other vehicles so much that it would impact the travel times for buses as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it actually improves transit service to not have transit only lanes in certain locations on the corridor.
But I guess it depends, you know, where those transit only lanes start and stop is the key. Can they get in and out of those? And what the analysis was showing is typically the first signal you hit, definitely westbound, because there's only 4 lanes wide. Without a reconstruction project and taking out all the parking and the bump outs that are out there to create extra space, if you just have a 2-lane road and transit lanes on both sides, no one can turn left. As soon as someone wants to turn left, you know, that starts really creating general traffic backups. So, you know, if it's at West River Parkway, you're into St. Paul, wherever that happens. So that was the analysis that was done, and it just showed that you know, you either restrict all the lefts and it's just a through route for in 2 directions, or you look at a bus priority concept where a balanced bus priority concept is what we landed on. Does that, I'm not sure if that answered everything.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. I think it's hard to visualize without looking at, like, you know, the traffic model things, but I think I know what you're saying. I'll have to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Janice? Janice, you might be on mute.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, this is Janice Geffner. I'm a Park Board citizen rep. And then maybe this is a comment more than a question, but I'm mostly familiar with the west end of the corridor, and it's so excessively wide. And for much of it, I mean, west of DuPont, it's only one direction. So you have 4 or 5, it seems like 5 lanes of traffic going in one direction, and it's just massive for pedestrians to cross. And so in a sense, it's a shame that here's another Lake Street project that's not in any way making it easier for pedestrians to cross. So I don't know whether that area would be ripe for an island. Certainly a bike lane. I don't know what a bike lane for a section would do. That would make it at least less, but it's not only excessively wide for pedestrians, but I find that, you know, when cars have excessive width, that tends to increase speeding. You know, I mean, I even find when I'm driving, I have to pay attention because when you're in a wide road where there's not a lot of cars, it's natural to want to go faster. And so that, these cars are always going excessively fast on that west end of the street where there's so much room. And I don't know if it makes sense to have a bike lane that somehow connects to the Midtown Greenway at Bryant, or if there's a way of crossing at DuPont. That would certainly take away width from cars, but I'm just wondering if there's anything that you can do to make that area more pedestrian friendly.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Janice. We are aware of those concerns that you've mentioned. That so the one-way pairs of Lake and Lagoon haven't been reconstructed like they are east of DuPont. So east of DuPont is all the bump outs. Those aren't typically, except for a few specific projects that have been completed and are under design and going to be done, like Hennepin Avenue. I think Girard got some bump outs, but we are looking into that. We recognize that is missing on Lake and Lagoon, and that would be a great improvement to be added to this project. Would be to bump out for sure those parking bays that are still there. Lake Street is probably is definitely wider than Lagoon Avenue, but we are looking into that and seeking to find funding to add those improvements to the scope of work.
Thanks.
Matthew?
Hi, yeah, Matthew Hendricks again. I know that, you know, this is one of the city's high crash corridors, and the city does have some funding for doing quick build safety improvements. And I don't see any locations where you're shortening the pedestrian crossing distances, even where you've got, like as Janice mentioned, excessive travel lanes. Have you done any partnership with other parts of public works, city public works, about incorporating safety for pedestrians into the project? And I should say specifically by shortening crossing distances and using temporary materials to create bump outs.
So, well, the short answer is no. on that, I mean, the crossing distances, again, this is from a permanent infrastructure standpoint, which is where we're at right now. We're still in the planning stage of really just trying to identify what we can do with this project and really work with our partners to find the funding on this very short timeline to get it delivered. So as mentioned, you know, DuPont, to the east, it's been reconstructed. It's got the bump outs yet. You know, it's that we're trying to get that transit advantage and that safety with the 3-lane section through there. So there really isn't anything else to bump out there to shorten that distance, unless we give up something. You know, the transit lane or the 3-lane section, which we don't is beyond the scope of this project, because this is really just an overlay and restriping project between the station areas. So, but then between from DuPont to the west to through the one-way pairs, that's where we can reduce the crossing distance, because at least from, well, we can reduce the number of lanes and exposure of through vehicles by adding a bus lane in both directions. So there's a benefit there from a vehicle exposure, but it's still a bus lane across. But then if we can add those bump outs to really get those pedestrians more visible, closer to the actual travel lane or bus lane, that will shorten the crossing distance. So we are working to get those included in this project on Lake and Lagoon, the one-way pairs.
And maybe it's also important, or maybe Cody, you were just going to say this. I mean, I want to steal it from you. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I was also just going to mention that at the future Beeline station locations, those stations will be built, except for, I believe, the station at Lindale will be built on curb bump outs. It'll be a 60-foot long curb bump out at the station location. And so we'll be filling in some of those pedestrian gaps as part of the Beeline project too with those stations.
And then maybe I'll just add point taken about temporary improvements. So we can definitely take that back and look into that if we aren't able to include this in the pending project here, slated to start construction somewhere on the route next year.
Yeah, I'll just add that the Vision Zero corridors as part of the Vision Zero capital project have already been selected, and the Vision Zero team was involved in the discussions and in this project as well. So I'll just add that, and also that I think we are looking more to do of these permanent improvements, at least at intersections where we can, versus adding bollards. Just because it is such a high travel corridor, and as Chad mentioned, there's already bump outs east of DuPont. So other than, I think maybe some other things that were considered if you aren't able to have left turn lanes is hardened center lines or things like that. But other than that, there would be more benefit to the permanent bump outs, especially where there aren't existing bump outs, like west of DuPont.
Matthew, do you have a follow-up? Nope.
Yeah, I do. So first of all, thank you. That's a helpful response, and I'm glad to hear you reached out to Vision Zero to see about potential improvements. And then another question I have, Chad, I think I'm fairly paraphrasing what you said earlier about adding bus lanes in areas of higher congestion. It sounded like you had a concern that where there's more congestion, there's also more temptation for general traffic to sneak into the bus lane and use it as a bypass for the congestion. And so I'm curious about whether the project team is thinking at all about any kind of barrier to restrict general traffic from entering the bus lane at key locations, or anything above and beyond paint, so that the bus lane functions as a bus lane where it's needed most.
So at this time, no, we are not reviewing or looking into that. I think it's an option. The few things to consider is the curb to curb width out here is already really narrow, even to fit a bus lane in there. I think on the reconstructed segment, they're about 10.8 foot lanes, and there's a little bit of curb reaction. So there's not much space to get much in there, but you could probably fit a delineator or something like that. So that could be considered. They are being shared by right turns and access to parking and business driveways. So there's still the need to honor that those users can hopefully get into those spaces without traveling in the bus lane for the entire block to get there. But I think some of that needs to be worked out, and there's going to be lessons learned on other similar projects as well that are being bus lanes are being implemented throughout the city. So we are all talking together on that, but right now I think we're just focusing on scoping out paint and messages and signage. And we do have, I'll just add, I mean, Minneapolis traffic staff has the expertise in that area, so we are working closely with them on this project as well.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
I'll take a crack at this. This is Dan Miller. I represent Ward 1, and thank you for the presentation. This is exciting. I had a little difficulty recalling when the last time that you had come to the BAC, and I would like to say this is the first time that there's really a lot of substance to kind of digest, and I appreciate all the information you were able to add to our agenda and that we had a chance to review ahead of time. But what I'm seeing right now is a 10% design. And if I'm correct, you're looking for approvals. You're going before the PWI committee and to the council for approvals of this in the next month, right? Or am I wrong? Yeah.
Well, we lost Yasna here, but essentially, yes, approval of moving forward. Now, the one thing I'll say is we don't have all the funding lined up to deliver what was presented today, and this is coming together quickly, and we are actively searching for that fundings and trying to incorporate this into the Beeline project. So I am not exactly sure what what is being brought forward to the city council, but I mean, this is all being shared with them as the approach moving forward, and yeah, want to get concurrence that we are on the right track and continue to work together to align agreements, funding, and delivery of a similar project.
So I would invite you to come back to the BAC at 30% and to hear how some of the recommendations, both from the public and our team, have been implemented or reasons why they have not been. I attended the open house you had last night with Moves Minnesota, partly just because this stuff's hard to get your head wrapped around when you're just, everybody puts presentations together differently, and this one had a lot of stuff to try to get your head wrapped around. And one thing that I had mentioned there, and Kathleen Mayo had responded back to, was you know, we are preserving parking pretty much as is. We're going through one of the, if not the main cultural neighborhood in the city. And yet to get there by bicycle is pretty difficult. So if you are wanting to shop, you're wanting to dine, you are employed, how do you get there on bike, half block, in between, you name it? And so while there are some difficulties here, and I understand that perfectly, we talked a little bit about, well, people will ride in the bus lanes. There's nothing that's against that, and I'm sure that you don't want to encourage that, but they will do that. But one thing I had mentioned that Kathleen seemed to say that no studies have been done for additional bike corral parking on Lake Street. And as you know, we have a bike corral program that is initiated by a business, which, if you did a study on Lake Street right now, there's not a lot of places. Well, I can't say that. Where I've parked, it's locking a bike up to a parking meter or there's not consistent bike parking across this entire corridor. And it's a perfect chance, while you're doing this and while Lake Street is coming back to life, to really take a look at this abundance of parking and say, we can put bike corrals on every block, something to that effect. Maybe we should be looking at that, so it becomes easier for people to, and that's just taking over parking spaces. It's not taking a lot, but to say it's taking 2 per block. And I'd sure like to see if somebody would review that and consider that happening when you implement this. Thank you. I have just one other question for you. This is going to be a lot of red paint you're going to be putting down for this whole section, and I'll admit that I haven't observed Hennepin Avenue as much, as because it's just not in my locale where I go, but that red paint is awfully beaten up and looks awfully rough. So if you're doing this red paint treatment, is it better red paint, or is there going to be a schedule of, keeping it red so it doesn't disappear?
Great comments, Dan. And yes, that's in the minds of us here trying to figure it out in our expertise, our experts, I should say, in traffic striping and operations. So yes, it is a lot of red paint. It we were looking at other cities nationally, what others are using, and even in Canada, just trying to understand what our options are. We really want it to stand out so people know if they're violating it versus them just drifting in there, not really realizing if they're new to the area. So yeah, that's one thing. The other thing that Minneapolis has shared with us, and there's been studies from other municipalities that have done this, is the pavement that you put it on makes a difference. So right now we are proposing a mill and overlay, so a brand new pavement surface to take that red paint will make it last longer. So we are learning from others on that as well, and obviously Minneapolis is a good testing zone based on Hennepin and Chicago, and 7th Street I think has them. So a few other locations they're monitoring and keeping track of the maintenance depending on the surface it's put on and how it was prepped. So yeah, we're taking that into consideration, and with the understanding of there will need to be whatever's done will need to be redone at a certain frequency. So we want to make sure we have that lined up so that we can keep it in good order.
Is there something that you would like from us?
Yeah, so as Chad mentioned, this project will be going to PWI, the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, on March 31st. So last year at the Transportation and Public Works Infrastructure Committee meeting, when we brought forward staff comments on the Beeline BRT corridor plan, it was the draft, I believe, or recommended corridor plan. Staff did receive some direction from the council. So now we will be circling back and presenting this item as a receive and file presentation on March 31st. So we are asking for resolutions from both the PAC and BAC that we can attach to that.
Right. If there are some folks, some BAC members that would like to contribute to helping to write a resolution, I would like to know. I don't need to know at the moment, but your input and advice would be appreciated. Alyssa.
I'm both volunteering and then also have a question for Yasna around the receive and file. So this is an informational point for the council, and they're approving the project later, or it's already been approved, or like what's the?
Yeah,
I'm not sure the question I'm trying to ask here. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I think I understand what you're trying to ask. So typically we don't bring our BRT projects through council. We bring the comments on the corridor plans, and then at the end we do bring through council an agreement, a formal agreement that gets approved. So we will do that once the BRT is farther down the road in terms of design. So the reason why we are coming back to council is because the item was pulled at the last meeting in August when we brought staff comments on the recommended corridor plan, and basically the staff direction was for the project team to consider bus-only lanes wherever possible in order to meet our city's climate goals outlined in the city's transportation action plan. So when we bring this back, it's more to say, here is the work that we've done in that time frame, and here's what we're proposing, and we will just receive and file. So we're not asking to approve, since typically we don't bring striping projects through council approval. So the actual striping changes won't be coming through council for approval at any point, but there will be an agreement later on, one with Metro Transit for the BRT, and then another one with Hennepin County for the striping. Does that? It's a little bit.
That answers my non-question, and I know you repeated yourself somewhat.
Oh,
so
no.
I appreciate you contextualizing it specific to the receive and file. Thank you.
Do you know at this time what your lane widths are on the road? What are the bus lane widths, and with some accuracy, or is it still kind of just flagged in there?
Well, I can tell you what's out there today, and then maybe a little more information about what we kind of assumed. But, you know, for the 4-to-3 conversion part, the stripes are going to pretty much stay where they are. They're just changing orientation. You know, it might be a solid line instead of a stripe, dashed line. But most of the project, DuPont to Hiawatha, I think is 10.8 foot lanes, 4 of them, with I think a 18-inch gutter for the curb. I think, let's see, east of Hiawatha, east of Minnehaha, I think there are 11-foot lanes out there, so 4 11s. Oh, and parking's 8 feet. That does include the curb and gutter when we measure that. So, and then I'm not sure. You know, the lake and lagoon, I'm not sure what those are. I think Lake Street's got some wide lanes with 10-foot parking on both sides in the one-way pair. So I'm not as confident in those because it hadn't been reconstructed. But what we are showing, especially DuPont to the east, is pretty much maintaining those lane widths, so around 11 feet. I think the bus lane, like at specific locations at like Lindale, I believe is 10 plus a 2-foot gutter. So I think that's consistent with Minneapolis Street Design guidance as well. I think the turn lanes maybe there are 10 feet, but ranging between I think the through lanes are 10.5 because it's a constrained area. So ranging between 10 to 10.5 to 11.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anybody's hands raised, and we're going once. Thanks a lot for doing this presentation. It's a lot of information to digest, and I know there's a lot of excitement about this, and we'll try to get you a resolution to our meeting is the 3rd. It's going to be coming late, so look for it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And I just put a link to the website, which I'm sure you have written down, but you can check out a little bit more information there. And we're hoping to get that open house information on there anytime now, today or tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks all.
Very good. So for the BAC team here, BAC committee, is there, well, first of all, Alyssa raised her hand as a person that was interested in being able to help draft a resolution. Is there anyone else that we should be looking at? Typically, I try to get these resolutions prepared by the end of, well, before next Wednesday, not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday for the executive call meeting. And I try to get the resolution out to the people that attended this meeting so they have a chance to review and comment on that. So, okay. Announcements. Any announcements from anyone? All right. Well, thank you for attending. Enjoy the lovely weather outside. There's still some daylight, and we'll get out and do that. Yeah. So.
Thanks everyone.
Dan.
Okay. Bye-bye.